You need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. We need more dogs.
And welcome back to the Shaving Points podcast. My name is Jayton May, joined as always by my co-host Quentin Crisco, and also joined by special guest Joe Summers.
Joe, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, where they can find your work, and all that good stuff?
First of all, appreciate you guys having me on. My name's Joe Summers. I'm born and raised in Kansas City. You can work on the Fan-Sided Network, though I help run a Kansas City-specific website called KC Kingdom, just like Kansas City with Kingdom right after. And you can find my work there. Again, it's more than a pleasure to be on with you guys tonight, especially a couple Texas Tech fans, so you know how great Patty Mahomes is.
We just going to start it off with the Chiefs tonight?
Yes, sir. AFC West starting off with the Kansas City Chiefs. Starting off with you, Jay, is there anything in this lineup that you see as kind of just stands out to you? Like, I don't want to say positive or negative, but that you're just like, that outside of Patrick Mahomes, because Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, so I got two things. It's never a bad day whenever you have probably a top 3 defensive player in the league while having a 2-time MVP, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, been to 6 straight AFC Championship games. But I am curious, looking at these additions, are we going to have a quarterback controversy here on our hands with Carson Wentz? I mean, people forget he basically won MVP.
You know, right before Mahomes started, too. Carson Wentz is interesting to me because I actually think that the role he could be for us, aside from the random Chad Henne appearance against the Browns in the playoffs, is the short yardage quarterback sneak situation. Ever since Mahomes hurt his kneecap against the Broncos a few years ago, we don't run quarterback sneaks at all, and we're 25th, I believe is what it is. You have to check me on that. I believe it's 25th over the last 2 years in 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1 conversions. It's easily the most frustrating part of watching the Chiefs offense besides the drops last year. Carson Wentz is really good. He's a large dude. I think there could be a package that we run in the playoffs against the Bills or someone like that, where Carson Wentz finally does the quarterback sneak. So he's got a little dual threat. Like, sure, he's the backup, but I think we might have a package for him in the playoffs too.
Yeah. Now, I'm never a fan of taking the best player off the field for any reason, but I'm with you. In those scenarios, I mean, I don't really want to see him getting under center and getting in that dog pile either if I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so I get that. But losing L'Jarius Sneed, how do we feel about this DB room?
So L'Jarius Sneed was our shadow corner last year, and it kind of let Trent McDuffie roam all over the field. He had 5 forced fumbles last year. His specialty was kind of being almost like a free safety is the wrong phrase for it, but he roamed while L'Jarius Sneed shadowed. My question is if they're going to have Trent McDuffie shadow this year, or if he's going to stay in kind of that hybrid role and someone like Jalen Watson steps up in shadow. That's the biggest question about the room. But honestly, at this point, say what you will about Brett Veach's inability to draft wide receiver aside from Rashee Rice. Cornerback in the mid to late rounds, he's crushed. And so I believe in the room, even if on paper it doesn't look as good last year. And I think that our defensive line is going to get home enough that the secondary won't have to be elite to still have really good pass coverage numbers.
So, Q, what about Karlaftis? Do you think he's making any steps forward?
Yeah, so I have some questions with this D line along like because Karlaftis, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I feel like Karlaftis is a guy who's going to be like a really solid football player for a long time, but I'm not sure his ceiling is quite where you'd hope for some other edge rushers, where he's going to set a powerful edge. He's going to give some nice power rushes to you as a pass rusher, but he's never going to be that bendy guy. Is there a guy like a BJ Thompson or a Felix Anduke-Uzomah who is feeling like they might be able to break out and be that more speed rusher, that wide 9 technique type guy, or is that kind of missing out this roster, you think?
I wouldn't say BJ. I'd say there's optimism for Felix. He had some nice plays in the playoffs, and ultimately defensive line rotation was a little bit too crowded for him last year. Minihue, whenever we get him back from the ACL tear, he's a guy that I'm excited about. Felix, maybe. But otherwise, I think a lot of it just comes from not even necessarily having one person that can just get around really quickly, but just having constant pressure along the front forward. The Mike Dana 3-year contract extension, I think, was really big. He had 6.5 sacks, 5.5 of them were when Minihue was suspended last year. So when Minihue was out, Dana stepped up, almost a sack a game clip. You throw that on top of Karlaftis, Chris Jones, and the way that Steve Spagnuolo will throw him all over the defensive line, that it's almost like a, by the whole committee, we're going to get pressure on most plays as opposed to necessarily having one dominant pass rusher.
So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought up Dana, because he's a guy who I'm curious about, because he kicks inside at times, right? He plays kind of a base end sometimes. Like, he's not your typical edge rusher, right? He's more like a hybrid kind of player. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's correct. He came in inside a lot, because one of the biggest weaknesses on our defense is whoever's behind Chris Jones on the inside. Derek Notty's been doing it for a few years, but that's kind of like the hole in the defensive front. And so a lot of times Steve Spagnuolo will flip guys around, bring nickel blitz or something like that if we have fewer guys on the defensive line. So Dana he was one of the biggest offseason extensions, in my opinion, because he allows that flexibility. He knows the system. He's been here this will be his 5th year. So having that familiarity with Spagnuolo's complicated scheme, like, gives him that edge, especially as guys like Karlaftis or Anidiki Uzama come along.
With the Spags talk, like, I've got to ask about linebackers and safeties, because I feel like last year I stopped doing them partway through the season because the Bears season was brutal. I was like, I can't put 8 hours of tape review into a Bears game anymore. But I used to do scouting reports, and one of the last ones I did was KC. And it was just like, it was like watching masterful art, the way that this guy was playing his linebackers and safeties. But I couldn't I don't know exactly how to describe it, because it's like, I felt like he was rotating like 4 or 5 linebackers in and out and using them almost like a defensive line rotation would. But so what exactly does Spags do between the linebacker room and the safety room to be so effective?
Something different almost every play. It's so difficult to watch as a fan, or even someone that, I have a pretty good understanding of football, but even just watching it, I get confused about who's in what position, because he switches it up so often. The AFC Championship game against Lamar was a masterclass, in my opinion, just the ways he was disguising coverages and doing different things. And so, just on any given play, we could have Trent McDuffie pulling a fake shadow while Chris Jones lines up on the outside and Mike Dana stunts inside, and then Trent McDuffie ultimately winds up, blitzing. And then L'Jarius Sneed or Justin Reed or someone slides down to shadow. It's very unique. And as a Chiefs fan for my entire life, from the Bob Sutton days, it's really beautiful to see. Like, I don't feel like I should be sitting on the couch being able to predict the plays that are happening. So I just sit back and watch. It almost looks like Broadway unfolded.
Yeah, no, I
love
love
watching
it.
that defense.
It's so much fun to watch. It's like you said, you just don't know what's coming next. And it's just like a giant mystery, and you're trying to solve it the whole time. And that whole time, you're also seeing an offensive coordinator trying to solve it and struggling to do it. So it makes you feel pretty good about yourself at the same time as a fan. But why don't we, instead of just getting in position by position right now, why don't we go through some of the subtractions on this roster? And Joe, I'd love to hear from you what you think some of these subtractions mean for the roster and who might need to step up in that place. And we already talked a little bit about L'Jarius Sneed, and he talked about, the interesting aspect with McDuffie and Watson. But is Williams going to be CB3, and is McDuffie going to be in the nickel, you think, when they're in nickel, obviously, because I don't think McDuffie's coming off the field. But how do you see this cornerback room playing out?
So if you'd asked me before the start of last season, I would have put Joshua Williams ahead of Jalen Watson. But last year, Williams had just under 30% of snaps. Watson had a little bit over 40. He seems to have overtaken him despite being drafted in the 7th round versus the 4th. I think it's going to shake out where, unless Spags is doing some kind of disguising, I think Jalen Watson is going to take that L'Jarius Sneed type of shadow role and let McDuffie roam around. He was first team All-Pro for a reason. I'm not positive on that. It's one of the things that I'm really excited to see on training camp. Guys that I'd look out for though, Najee Johnson, Shamari Connor, and then we have Brian Cook coming back at safety off of a broken ankle in the middle of last year. And a big thing with Spags is his safeties and his corners, aside from a guy like Justin Reed, they'll be interchangeable. Like part of the reason that he can do all these disguises is because you don't know who's going to be covering you. So it could be any of them, and I think that we might see an increase in the disguises until someone asserts themselves in that Snead role, because he's a huge loss. It's terrible to lose him. He was amazing last year, but I think we're going to see some disguises to help fix that.
Now, when you say aside from Justin Reed, is that because he's the center fielder at all times or most of the time kind of thing?
Most of the time. You don't usually see him doing the disguise. Like if Justin Reed's doing some kind of nefarious activities, it's typically a blitz.
Okay. And then, so Nick Allegretti, did he play much last year? Because I know he's been a guy who's been there for years and been a big part of them getting rings, but I don't remember if he actually saw much of the field last year.
So he started the Super Bowl, actually.
Okay.
Joe Tooney got hurt, I want to say, in the Bills game. I might be wrong on that. But whenever Joe Tooney went down, Allegretti stepped up and took over. And he hurts a lot, honestly. We took 3 offensive linemen in the draft this year. Partially, 2 of them were guards, in my opinion, to try to replace Allegretti, because he was a guy that could play multiple positions. We've got Trey Smith as an upcoming free agent. Joe Tooney has 1 year left on his deal. So we need guards, and losing Allegretti, but good for him. He'll be a starter with Washington. That's one of the more significant injuries, in my opinion, because if Trey Smith or Tooney go down, we're hurting a bit.
Now, I mean, y'all got Hunter Norzad, and that was my dude in this draft class. I mean, I doubt you saw my Twitter profile until just like this week, but
I'm pumped about him.
The background of my Twitter profile said Hunter Norzad no matter what, and I was crushed when he wasn't a Chicago Bear. So I'm happy for you guys for getting the Penn State legend / Cornell legend that is the most beautiful mullet in football in Hunter Norzad.
You Bears fans had a pretty good draft, though.
I was. Trust me, I slept just fine. But moving past that, I'm curious, what type of role do you think Jaden Hicks is going to have here? Because he was a really weird player to watch, and he was a guy who I was probably further down on than most of the public. But then he went to Spags, and I was like, Spags is going to be fun with him.
Yeah, he's him and Kamal Haddon in the 6th round are, if you were to try to build the mid to late round safeties or corners that you would put in the Spag system, it'd be them. His physicality is awesome. And Justin Reed's coming up on an extension this year. This is last year of his deal. He'll be 28 by that time. He's probably looking at a pretty hefty deal. Brett Veach has literally never signed a player in the secondary to an extension. So we're looking at physical players. That's why Brian Cook's really important this year, to kind of take over that Tyrann Mathieu Honey Badger, Justin Reed physicality role. Jaden Hicks feels like the insurance policy to Brian Cook, so I'm fired up about him. I over at Casey Kingdom, I wrote a couple mock drafts, and 2 of like the people I wanted more than anything were Kingsley Suamataia and Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks is going to be nice in Spags. If he went to, I don't know, the Titans, I wouldn't feel so confident, but he's going to be cool for us. He's going to be really nice.
Now with Suamataia, did you think 63 was a bit of a reach, or did you think that was about where he belonged?
I thought it was about right.
Okay.
And again, take my word for what it's worth. But it felt like I think that the Chiefs were emphasizing athleticism in that tackle spot, and they wanted some kind of, not to say that he has necessarily a hugely different skill set from Wanya Morris, but I think that they weren't fully sold on Wanya Morris to take over that Donovan Smith role, and so they wanted someone with a lot of upside. If he hits what his athletic profile could be, it's going to be a great pick, where it kind of represents the opposite of the safe pick that I felt like Morris was, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I was genuinely asking because Suamataia was a guy who I had a really hard time valuing on my draft board, because it was like, this guy is so raw, but the athleticism is ludicrous, and I just I hit a point where it's like, I don't like his tape at all, but that doesn't mean that he's not worth this range. It just means I don't know how to grade it, because it's like, guys that raw come out all the time and do something in the league. You look at like a Jordan Mailata, you know, I mean, he didn't even know how to play the game, but at the same time, it's like, I'm trying to build a grade based on film, and the film is not there for me with him. But that brings me to Wanya Morris, who is interesting to me because he's a guy who I thought last year in the draft had so much upside.
We both liked him a lot.
Yeah, and he seemed like he had a pretty rough up and down college career, but it ended on a decently high note once he got with the right coaching staff, the right team. And I thought he looked outstanding at the Senior Bowl last year. And I went back and watched 2 of his games just last week from late in the season, once he started getting some snaps last year in KC when they needed someone to fill in at left tackle. And it was like really up and down. But man, the game against the Bengals for him when he's battling with Trey Hendrickson, I thought that was really fun to watch and really showed some really nice stuff from him at this point, where it's sitting there going into camp, or not camp quite yet, but soon, where you're saying Morris, it's his job to lose, or is it more Sumatea and him are just battling for it? Because especially once you start to consider I believe Morris just got arrested last week. Is that right?
Yeah, he got arrested for a misdemeanor marijuana charge, and I live really close
The year
to the state
2024
border.
of our Lord.
Yeah, so it's legal in Missouri recreationally, cannabis, and illegal in Kansas. But state line essentially is a 5-minute divide from what you know Kansas City as, from Missouri to Kansas. He was like 8 minutes on the Kansas side. So he was really close, and I don't think personally that the Chiefs really care about that with everything else that's going on this offseason. I don't think it matters. Right, exactly. So I don't think that part matters. With the Morris thing's interesting. I really liked him as a prospect as well, just like you guys. And it's a great question, and it's probably the single biggest thing to watch in training camp for the Chiefs, because I think you hit the points perfectly. So Suamataia represents the athletic, high upside player. Morris, we saw games for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl as a rookie. Donovan Smith ultimately did, but if he remained injured, it would have been Morris. So they were comfortable enough with him in that regard, but also not comfortable enough that they used the number 63 overall pick and traded up with the Niners to get Suamataia. So I think they look at Morris as the safe play. And if Kingsley doesn't work out, we've got a guy. But in my opinion, drafting Kingsley says that they don't view him as a long-term answer. Or he could be Jawan Taylor replacement in a couple years. But for me, I think that Morris has the job right now. I'd put it probably like a 65-35. But I think that the second that he has some kind of, ailment or nagging injury, they're going to say, hey, Kingsley, let's see what you got. And see if he takes the bull by the horns.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the one other glaring issue glaring question, not issue, but question when I look at this is Rashee Rice and how this is going to play out at the wide receiver spot, because, Hollywood and Xavier, I feel like they're a little bit redundant to each other. Like, I think Xavier has some more upside than Hollywood does, but smaller speedster types, I feel like is a fair way to describe them, even if I think Worthy's route running is probably a bit better than that. But we look at the rest of this wide receiver room, and do you trust Justin Watson?
No.
One of my favorite bets the last 3 years is Justin Watson over 16.5 yards. And he broke my heart
I bet it a bunch
times last year. Just so many times where he just dropped like a 30-yard ball. And it's just like, I can't do it.
Yeah, so many drops.
So there's a few points here off of that. First, no, I don't trust him. Second, tied to that though.
Who do you trust in this wide receiver?
No, yeah, I didn't trust him last year, and it worked out. I trust Patrick, and we'll figure it out on the way. Yeah. But so the Rashee Rice thing is really interesting because none of us here have any idea what's happening. Nate Taylor of The Athletic, who I believe is a fantastic reporter, a Kansas City beat reporter for them. He thinks it's going to be 6 to 8 games at the beginning of this year. Other reporting that I've seen indicates it could come the following year after the legal case potentially plays out. None of us know. So it's this black cloud hanging over this theoretical three-peat. But the issue for me is that regardless of whether or not Rashee Rice is playing, so as it stands, Sky Moore is the wide receiver with the most experience in this system. Second place is Kadarius Toney. And Sky Moore has 2 years. Kadarius has 1.5 years. Those are the two most experienced receivers in this system. And, I mean, I have an issue with that. But I've also watched Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, make lemonade out of lemons enough times that I've got faith. But no, it's a scary concern, to say the least.
After what they did last year with that wide receiver room, I mean, if there was ever any doubts about Patrick Mahomes, I think all of those questions have been answered now. But I didn't love Xavier Worthy coming into this draft, but as soon as he got to the Chiefs, I'm like, love that pick. I didn't really like him, but it's like as soon as he got there, I'm like, oh yeah, they'll make that work.
If Patrick wants him, sounds good to me. That's kind of where I'm at. I didn't necessarily want him either. The size definitely concerns me, but vroom vroom, go fast. Patrick wants you. Sounds good to me.
Speaking of Patrick,
as long as you can have Travis Kelce out there not dropping balls, I think that wide receivers will be just fine.
So I went back and pulled a bunch of numbers on Pat, and it was like I was trying to break these down evenly for every quarterback we look at. So I just broke it down as top 16 defenses versus bottom 16 defenses. Pat was better against top 16 defenses, even though he was working with very little last season. And it's just like the more you dig on this guy, the more ridiculous everything gets. It's incredible.
I love the first thing that stuck out to me here is the negative 6.2 completion percentage over expectation against the Lions, because I bet every single one of those negative marks was a pass to Kadarius Toney. Oh, yeah. It was right in his hands. And yeah, the thing that it looked like over the course of the season was that against the lighter opponents was when he was, let's see if Sky Moore can catch this contested pass. Let's see if this can happen. And then the harder games, he was taking off and running or dumping to Travis or something like that. Like, he knows when to pick and choose his spots to see if someone's going to earn it or not, which is really impressive in my opinion. And it's unbelievable now to be in the position where I'm looking at the regular season thinking it does not matter what happens. As long as he's healthy in the playoffs, we're good.
Right. And I think that's exactly what I was coming away from these numbers thinking, that like, so he can screw around a little more against the bottom 16 defenses and try to, it's something that gets kind of brushed over sometimes, of like, not every game gets game planned the same way. Like, teams need some break weeks on their schedule where they're saying, okay, we're rolling out half the same game plan as last week, and we're just going to try to grit this one out because our guys need a break. And that's usually against the bottom 16 defenses for an offense, I feel like. And those are the games where I feel like Pat Mahomes, you look at the ADOT, almost a full yard higher, the CPOE 2 percentage points lower. Like, he was taking more risks, taking more chances, it felt like. But against the top 16 defense, it's more buttoned up. It's more like, okay, we got to do what's going to work.
You also have to factor in that he had an infant last year during the season. And so, like, our Christmas Day loss to the Raiders, that was, he had 2 young kids on Christmas Day. He's going to pick and choose the spots that he knows he can pull daddy duty. Right. So be on the lookout. We got the Steelers on Christmas this year. I'm not feeling too confident about that one.
Justin Fields.
I love Justin Fields, honestly.
It's going to be a 2 QB offense, man.
If the Steelers run a 2 QB offense on Christmas Day, I think the Chiefs will just mail that one in. Let them have it.
One last thing I want to talk about with these position groups. Outside of left tackle, this might be one of the best offensive lines in football, if not the best offensive line. Like, the interior is probably the best in football between the guards and center.
Oh, Chris Humphrey's far and away the best center in the league.
Yeah. And, I mean, Joe Tooney's probably the best guard in the league, and Trey Smith is no slouch either. Like, and I like Jawan Taylor in pass pro quite a bit. His run blocking I didn't think was as bad as his PFF grades, tend to say it is, but I don't think he's poor by any means. So that left tackle spot is really the only one. I'm just like, as long as you give Pat an O-line like this, I think he's going to be able to cook. And even like you mentioned the Raiders game from last year, I watched that one to be looking at the Raiders defense, and man, that was not a pretty game for Wanya Morris. Like that, there was like at least one interception that was probably on Wanya in that game.
Yeah, and sorry about that. I lost you at the very end there. I agree that the left tackle is the only real question. So Jawan Taylor had a lot of penalties last year that we'd have to keep an eye on. But on the interior, I mean, yeah. And Isaiah Pacheco's run style, assuming that he stays healthy, is a perfect complement to that interior bruising style.
I love the way Isaiah Pacheco runs the football. It is a sight to behold.
He's so much fun. That's a position that is a big question mark aside from left tackle and from Rashee Rice and the back end of the cornerback room. Is there's no more Jerick McKinnon. He's been huge for us. Like right now, we've got Pacheco, we've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then it's practice squad guys and Luis Reese-Zammit, Reese Lightning as we call him. That's the running back room, and so someone needs to be that Jerick McKinnon role, because I mean he had a catch on the game-winning drive of the Super Bowl. He had 9 receiving touchdowns the year before. We've got no one to take over for him right now, so that I'm waiting for an undrafted rookie or someone like that to take over, because I don't think Clyde's it as much as I wish he was.
I loved Clyde in that draft. I was like, oh, it's a perfect complement to that offense. Like he can do it all. He can run. He can catch. And he just hasn't been that. So, I mean, Pacheco's been huge for him, though. I bet they figure out some sort of scat back that they have on the team that can do those things, or they'll use Xavier Worthy or Hollywood Brown and that type of out of the backfield receiver role, stuff like that. I mean, never question Andy Reid's ability to scheme something.
Yeah, I mean, especially once you factor in like having Hollywood and Xavier on the outside, if you're in 11 personnel, it's going to be real hard to defend the run when you got 2 burners on the outside. I think it's going to be hard to put bodies in the box.
You still have Jason Kelsey going across the middle.
My like deepest, most back end of Reddit take for the Chiefs offense is that Kadarius Toney should be the new Jerick McKinnon. And then he should be out of the backfield, running those jet sweeps. If we can minimize the number of times that he has to catch, if he's doing that little pitch shovel right up the middle, if we start him in the backfield, because he's great with the ball in his hands, getting the ball there is the issue. So maybe we try that. That's my crazy conspiracy with the Chiefs, is that I want Kadarius Toney to be a running back.
It worked for Cordero Patterson.
Exactly. Thank you.
Cordero.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
I wanted him this offseason. I felt like he would have been perfect.
Who doesn't want a Cordero Patterson on their team?
And these new kickoff rules can be nasty.
They're gonna have Justin Fields returning kicks in Pittsburgh.
They were talking last week about Justin Reed doing kickoffs, since you only have that first line of defense. Oh, yeah, so getting Butker out of there and having Justin Reed do the kickoffs. So
he's a pretty good kicker too for a skill position.
Oh yeah,
you can get the job done for sure. Yeah, I mean that's smart. You have an extra defender out there.
All right, so looking at the last 5 years of this, it's got to feel pretty good to be a Chiefs fan. Like 63-20 over the last 5 years, 9 straight playoff appearances, 8 straight division titles, and 3 Super Bowls now?
3 Super Bowls, been to 4, 6 straight AFC Championship games.
Starting with you, Joe, and then going to Jay. On the bottom left corner of this, what do you see here that makes sense from a betting standpoint? Everything?
Certainly to win the division. Like everything. The Super Bowl and AFC Championship are a given, provided everyone stays healthy, in my opinion. The Bengals collapse in the AFC title game, and then the Patriots beating us in overtime was the only times we didn't make the Super Bowl in Patrick Mahomes' entire career. And this So, like, the big thing, I know Tom Brady had his comments on the Herd the other day about how difficult it is to win a three-peat. Mahomes lost to Brady in the Super Bowl. This is the one year that he has the opportunity to do something that Brady never accomplished. Like, this is the opportunity. If Mahomes stays healthy, the Super Bowl at plus 600 is an absolute steal. Honestly, what I would bet, aside from just like go Chiefs everything, is the Travis Kelce unders on receiving yards. I think they're going to protect him this year. Honestly, I think they're going to protect Kelce. They want to. I mean, he was so good in the playoffs after getting week 17 and 18 a rest. We just got Jared Wiley. We got Irv Smith Jr.
Yeah, I've got his.
I think that Kelce is gonna. And he was great, and then at the end of the year, he was a little bit hurt, and they rested him.
What kind of numbers do you think he'll put up this year?
I'm thinking like an 800-yard year.
Oh, that little?
Honestly, yes, because I think that his snaps are going to be brought down to ensure he's healthy, because they saw last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he was struggling.
So if he, even with the lower usage rate, 18 games or 17 game season, I think if he plays 14 games, he'll hit 1,000 yards.
So he had the huge chunk yardage weeks, the almost 200 against the Broncos and the like 160 or so against the Chargers last year. Outside of that, he was at like 40 a game. And I think that they're going to try to get other guys that work. I might be wrong on that. I hope I'm wrong.
Nursing an injury most of last year. I thought he was.
Yes,
the whole
and
season.
that's part of.
He had like an ankle or something,
he missed
right?
week one. He missed week one, and I think they're going to be weary of that and say all we need is Kelce to be healthy for the playoffs. So I think they're going to reduce his snaps a little bit. Outside of that, though, you can't go wrong with Chiefs to win the division and Chiefs to, like, if you parlay us to win the division with somebody else, or you just bet it straight up. I mean, this is going to be the 9th straight year. It's easy. Minus 230. Just take whatever 9 out of 10 odds are, and that's the value of minus.
Travis Kelce missing week 1 last year was incredible for fantasy because Sam Laporta was just on the waivers, and I was like, shit, I need a last second starter, and I picked up Sam Laporta. And that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think this entire year is just going to be get the important people healthy to the playoffs. We have a hard schedule.
Yeah,
11-6 last year proved it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I'm looking at these numbers and everything on bets. I really like the under 11.5 wins. I think the AFC is strong now. I think the AFC is as strong now as it's ever been. You just talked about all that matters is playoffs and Super Bowls anyway. So, yeah, I mean, 11 wins last year. I think the division's getting better. I think the entire AFC as a whole is getting better. And I think 11-6 is more than enough to have you in the running for number 1 seed in the AFC next year. So I'm just talking value here, value-wise out of all these. Like, plus 600 on Super Bowl is bonkers numbers. Like, there's so many things that could go wrong before a season even starts that I don't really see much value there. But, I mean,
that's what it was last year.
At even money, I like the under. I mean, if you would have done both last year, you would have came out great. You would have got the under 11.5 and the Super Bowl.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think you're right. I think there is some value on that.
If it wasn't 11, if it was just 11, I wouldn't like it. But having the hook there, that's probably what I like the most. But I mean, I'm gonna bet them to win the Super Bowl. I mean, I had a Patrick Mahomes MVP bet his second year in the league that paid out like $250 to 1.
Let's go. Great bet. Great bet. The argument against the 11.5, and I mean, again, I just made the argument on the other side, so take it for what it's worth. But last year, you look at some of the games that were lost. You had the Broncos scoring 2 defense touchdowns in 6 seconds just before Christmas. You had the Raiders winning on Christmas, or reverse. It was the Raiders who scored the 2 defense touchdowns. You had the Broncos winning the ridiculous game when Mahomes had the flu. You had the Lions lost that Kelce was out, Chris Jones was out, Kadarius Toney was out. You had all those things happen, and they still would have just won you that under by the hook. every other year of Mahomes' career under Andy, they've won at least 12, even dating back to the last year of Alex Smith's career, won 12. Andy typically wins 12, but the question is if they go 2-0 or 0-2 in the first 2 weeks, that'll tell you. Like if the Chiefs
Do we have their
beat
schedule?
the Ravens and we got the Ravens week 1 and the Bengals week 2. That'll tell you.
I'll just pull up the
Right
schedule
there.
real quick so we can see it. I think he's got it.
But you'll know immediately.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I think they can. I
if we start 2-0,
think they can start 0-2 and still get the over. I worry about what this Chargers team is going to look like that we'll talk about here in a minute. Under Harbaugh, I don't think they're going to be great, but they're going to be a hard team to beat, and playing them twice on top of you got Baltimore, Cincinnati, and then Atlanta's going to be frisky. I mean, I just think
I agree.
it's going to be a fun season. And like I said, I think 11-6 can still win you the AFC. But I just think the AFC is so tough that at even money, that's kind of what I was thinking. But 12-5 wouldn't surprise me one bit because, I mean, you could definitely find the wins there. But Houston late in the season, I mean, that's going to be a huge game, I think.
I hate that one. That's our it's the sandwich game. We have 3 in 10 days. We've got Cleveland
in the middle.
and then and then Texans, and then the Steelers is the third game of the 10 days on Christmas. It's a ridiculous schedule.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be the champions. Why are you doing this to us? What are we doing?
They gotta level the playing field somehow.
I love that Houston game. We're Stroud boys over here on this podcast. So
I wanted Houston week 1, man. I love their team. Nico just got that big extension today. Instead, we got to play the Ravens and the
Texans
Bengals.
Texans week 1 would have been fun.
Yeah, and now they're in a part where I just want to be healthy.
I love that Ravens game, though, to open the season. I mean, that's probably got to be one of the best season openers that we've had in a while. Last year ended up being a really good game, but everybody was worried about the Lions. Like, they're supposed to be good, but are we really going to put them on primetime week 1? They ended up showing out, but yeah, very nervous about that game last year. We were been on the Lions wagon for 3 years going into that. And that was like our make or break. Like, we've been calling our shot here for 3 years straight. Like, it's now or never.
Hey man, they covered every year. They were the best team against the spread for 3 straight years.
Yeah,
and we were the first on that train.
Yeah, but I mean,
looking forward to seeing who you're on this year.
Oh, we're still. Last year we were on the Texans. We called that right after the draft. I mean, I've been a huge Stroud fan ever since his very first start at Ohio State. The entire country was shitting on him, and then all he did from there was just be incredible. And I love CJ Stroud. He's no Patrick Mahomes, but love CJ Stroud.
I think we're leaning towards the Cardinals right now, but we haven't made a decision yet.
Ooh, I like that. That's solid. Especially with the leaky defense, you'll get a big number that Kyler can backdoor.
Yeah, I like their O-line. I like their head coach, Jonathan Gannon, a lot. So I just think that all the pieces are there, and they're going to be very much disrespected in the preseason odds and everything. I could honestly see them winning the division also, too. I mean, San Fran stayed extremely healthy the last 4 years. I just don't see them. I don't see that keeping up, and we're about to find out real quick if Brock Purdy can keep this thing going or not. So
I think he's fine. I don't think he can, though. The NFC champion never repeats. It's been 10 years since the NFC champion repeated. It's going to be somebody new. Like the Super Bowl hangover on a loss like that, it'll be real.
Cowboys, it's our year, baby. It's always our year. It's been our year.
Love to see you there.
I would love to see you there. It's been our year for 28 straight years. It's got to hit eventually.
I got to be honest with you. I got the Packers. I got Chiefs over Packers.
No, we don't talk about them on
I know.
podcast.
I'm just telling you, that's my pick. That's who I think.
I mean,
I was wrong last year. So
I can see it, and I
Chiefs
don't
over
want
Bears.
to, but I don't know. We'll see.
No, I predicted last week we're gonna see Caleb Williams versus Patrick Mahomes match up in the Super Bowl a minimum of 4 times. So might as well start year
Goodell
one.
would be a happy man if that happens. I'll be a very happy
I-
man too, but Roger Goodell will be very happy if that happens.
I love that prediction. I support
All right.
it.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for jumping on with us. Can you tell the people again where to find you, your Twitter handle, where you write for, all that good stuff?
Twitter handle at I am Joe Summers, like the season but plural. You can find me on the Fansided Network. KCKingdom.com is where you'll find the majority of my work, but anywhere across the Fanside you'll find me. Again, really appreciate you guys having me on. This was a blast, and I'm rooting for the Bears and go Texas Tech.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
well,
Wreck 'em Tech.
all right, Jay. What do you say we get into the record here, and then we will move on to the Chargers?
Chargers. So we just talked about that I like the under, but I'm about to give these guys 12 wins right here. But I mean, I think week 1 Ravens. I think they lose this game. And
Yeah,
you
that
get
one.
these-
I think that's possible. Like I
I
went
just think
back and
Lamar coming
forth
off
on this
MVP
one.
season. I think that defense is going to be improved in Baltimore. A fully healthy Ravens team, adding Derrick Henry. I don't think Derrick Henry has a ton left in the tank, but I think if there's ever a game to get up for Derrick Henry, it's this one.
Yeah, no, I went
So-
back and forth on this one. I think they're gonna go 1-1 in those first two, and it was just which one.
Yeah,
I
I got
ended up going with Chiefs week 1, Bengals week 2, but I can
Yeah.
see it going the other way.
so then after this, I got the Chiefs winning at home versus the Bengals. Then
And so-
going to
Let me say why I chose to go Chiefs Bengals instead of Ravens Chiefs in those first two games. And it's the wide receivers for the Ravens. Again, like I don't think that they are going to be a real problem for a Chiefs secondary that's still going to be figuring things out. But I think that the Bengals receivers might be a real problem for that secondary before they get things rolling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, let's just hope we have a fully healthy Joe Burrow versus a fully healthy Patrick Mahomes for this.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then I have them beating Atlanta in Atlanta. I kind of do like this Atlanta team this year, but yeah, I got to take the Chiefs
Mhm.
there.
Kirk Cousins has astigmatism. He can't play on Sunday night.
Yeah, so Chargers. First game against Chargers, I'm going to give to the Chiefs. And then I'm going to give them the New Orleans game. And then I'm with you. I think they lose to the Niners.
That's going to be a big game for the 49ers.
Yeah.
Lost twice in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs. Like, they're going to care a lot about that one.
Mm-hmm. Raiders, I have the Chiefs there. You have the Chiefs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the Buccaneers. Kind of like the Buccaneers here in a Monday night game coming off that Raiders game.
I thought about that one, too. I was close to...
It's just Baker, man. I mean, I think Baker gets up for Patrick Mahomes more than anybody else. And it's because he hates Texas Tech. And then after that, first Denver game, I'll take the Chiefs here. I'm with you here. This is the Bills Super Bowl. I'm taking the Bills.
Yeah, so week 11 in Buffalo. I mean, that's the biggest game of the year for the Bills. They're going to be up for that game.
I like the Chiefs here against the Panthers. And I like the Chiefs against the Raiders. I'll take the Chargers in the second matchup. I think Harbaugh getting to see a team twice. I don't see him getting swept by anybody in the division this year.
Yeah, I think I thought about that one. I was close.
Yeah, and then we have Cleveland. I'll take the Chiefs here. I don't really love this Cleveland team this year, unless Deshaun Watson just completely turns it around.
So
I really
went
like
with the Browns in that one, and the main reason is because questions at offensive tackle for the Chiefs. Myles Garrett can wreck a game.
Oh yeah, truly. But I'm assuming this late into the season, hopefully they've done something to figure that out. I'm taking Houston week 16. I think this is going to be an awesome game. I wouldn't be surprised if these two teams are fighting for the 1 seed. And then Steelers on Christmas Day, a Wednesday. Horrible
In
schedule.
Pittsburgh, this is how Mike Tomlin gets like to his 9th win. or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, this is Mike Tomlin's streak of not a losing season continues. I'll take the Steelers there. Then I'll take the Chiefs to finish it out. And how many? What's that record there? Is there anybody come that up?
You have a 10-7.
10-7. I think they'll get to 11, but yeah, now going through their schedule, I really like that under actually.
Yeah,
Because there's some wins
schedule.
there's some wins I gave them that could have been losses, and there's some losses that I gave them that could be wins. But I think 11 and a half.
It's not ranked as that tough a schedule. Must be because the Broncos stink, I guess.
The Broncos
by Vegas odds and traditional strength of schedule, they're in the easier half of.
It's probably the Broncos
NFL.
twice, and I bet they're not showing much love to the Chargers either.
Yeah,
but
and also the Panthers.
Oh, the Raiders. They got the Raiders. They got the Panthers. They got the Raiders.
The Raiders
Panthers.
were 7-10 last year. I mean, they weren't awful.
Yeah, but having them twice.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have 3 teams in your division that had a losing record last year.
Oh yeah, because the Chargers' record was awful. That yeah, okay, that makes sense then. That why the traditional they'd only be the 9th easiest schedule.
Yeah. But I don't think anybody's looking at that division this year thinking it's as bad as it was last year by any means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
okay, and then I got the Chiefs at 12-5 in mine. So we're actually pretty similar thought process on most of them, just a little bit different outcome on a few.
Yeah.
But
I think that's going to be right up there with I think 11-6, 12-5, somewhere in that range wins the AFC.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.